As you already heard, the novel was published by the wonderful small publishing house ICU. And as you can see, Nevena Dishlieva-Kristeva is here with us. Hello, Nevena. Hello. I am Katya Atanasova, and I will try to moderate this conversation. As a start, I would like to say a few words about the author. She is described as one of the promising Dutch talents with her first collection of short stories issued in 2001. She has also published several novels, and some of them were shortlisted for some very prestigious prizes, including Craving. Craving was also recipient of award for a general contribution to literature in the Netherlands. She also writes scripts for cinema and television. She also wrote the script for the Dutch contribution proposal for the Oscar Awards, and Craving was also made into a film in 2019. Ms. Gerritsen, before we start talking about your novel, I heard that you came to Bulgaria 15 years ago on the occasion of a play you wrote that was translated here. Do you remember anything about that?
I remember visiting the Nevsky Cathedral because I'm a Catholic from house out, so I was really curious to be there sometimes in an Orthodox religion, and my translator was there, and she took me into the service, and she just said, watch, look at the man beside you, do what he does, and then she went out. And but I was really impressed, and but it's been a very long time ago, so that was the most I remember is that service in the Orthodox cathedral.
I must say that whenever I go anywhere abroad, I visit Catholic cathedrals, even though I'm an Orthodox Christian. They have a specific sort of attraction to me, so I understand you and this memory. Now I'd like to turn to your publisher, Nevena Dishlieva-Kristeva, so she can tell us why she chose your novel. How did you choose this novel, Nevena? How did it arrive at your doorstep? How did everything happen? Since I don't understand Dutch, I had to put my trust into the translator, Maria Encheva. Perhaps some of ICU's readers know that we select our books in a sort of a continuation. They're interconnected. In almost every book, there is some sort of trauma that characters manage to overcome and arrive at the internal equilibrium. And we had worked on several books that had to do with fathers, so it felt natural that we should progress to mothers. And then maybe it was a coincidence or not, Maria Encheva told me about a book she had read recently that was Craving. And I thought it was very suitable because apart from the dramatic literature, I also care about good literature. Maria was kind enough to translate the first 10 pages so I can get a sense of it. I think that, well, now 2 years later, I am definitely not sorry that this book is a part of the ICU's catalog. I'm very grateful for this meeting with Esther. Esther and her agent, Michael, were great during the preparation process, during the organization process. They gave a number of interviews, and she's a true soldier, Esther.
Oh, that's great. I've never been called a true soldier. I'll remember that.
Now, I already mentioned that the novel sold more than 200,000 copies. It's a great, it's really impressive figure. Do you care about reviews? Would you say that they have an influence on you? Do you read reviews?
I must say I really, really hate reviews, but also reviews from other authors or other books. And I always feel like, well, the reviews in Netherlands, they also have a system qualifying your book. So you get 1 star or 2 or 5. And it feels like you did a test in school and the teacher says you did it wrong or you did it right. But it is as if they are in the museum and saying, well, it's a nice painting, but I should have painted the sky green. Well, I don't know if that's all over the world like that with reviews, but I find it the most uninspiring way to look at literature.
Да, аз по-скоро това, което казвате, разбира много добре.
Yeah, I understand very well what you're saying. It is a little bit like school. But when it's a matter of conversation about the book, things may turn out better after all.
Mm-hmm.
Now about the title, we all know what craving or thirst is. It can be a good thing or a bad thing. It can refer to victory. What does craving refer in your novel? Refer to craving to family, or is it anything else? Can you give us a key to it?
It refers to longing and to a longing that can never be fulfilled. And the original title in Dutch is called Thirst, and this also refers to the drinking problem of some of the characters, but it might as well be an eating problem or a buying problem. It's that they feel an emptiness and a longing that cannot be fulfilled. So one of the main characters, Coco, says, I want something, I don't care what it is as long as it is much.
Това е Коко, казва Коко.
This is Coco.
Yes.
Аз ще се върна на жаждата и на този...
I'd like to go back to craving now and this longing you mentioned. I'd like to mention for people viewing this now and future readers. the whole novel is based on dialogue. And on one hand, this is a matter of great skill, but we tend to connect this with drama and plays. Would you say that your experience in script writing helped you here, or is it that you just like dialogue and think that it is the backbone of any text?
I just like dialogue very much, and when I used to write for theater, I never used much dialogue in my novels because I thought, well, now I finally just can write about what people think and I don't have to let them talk anymore. And when I stopped writing for theater, later on I became a writer for film, then I put much more dialogues in my novels. But I always felt like it was cheating, like, well, you can fill page very easily with dialogue. But then again, I really, really love dialogue. And I'm always interested in how people do not understand each other. And the funny thing is that if you want to show how people cannot communicate, you have to let them talk.
Yeah, I agree. I can't really quote a lot from the book, but I'd like to say about for readers that very often dialogues between your characters don't really say anything. They replace something that's inside of them. This is one of the important points of the novel, as I see it. This is masterful work with language. Nevena said that the novel deals with trauma. While you were working on the novel, Elizabeth and Coco, the two main characters, do they have any prototypes? I just like to say for the readers that you have been awarded a prize for literary works talking about psychological issues.
Yes. Yes. Yes, I always... one time a newspaper wrote about me. She's like the writer of craziness.
Аз не знам дали това определено е много точно, но сигурност ви интересуват тези проблеми, понеже аз...
Obviously, you're interested in these issues.
Yes.
I managed to see a part of your library, your personal library at home, your
Yes.
bookshelves, and I saw a few books there to do with psychological conditions.
Yes, many.
Да, но сега да се върнем на вашия роман "Важна".
I'd like to go back to your novel. And the important question it poses, what it means to be a parent. The parent-child relationships are complex ones. What attracted you to to this kind of narrative for these two women to go where they do in your novel?
Well, it's about a mother and a daughter. I actually began to write about the mother, who's a very, I call her a dry type. Like the daughter is a wet type of person and the mother is a dry type of person. And the mother likes order and quietness, and everything needs to be clean and in the same order. And I thought, what's the worst thing that could happen to a person like that? And I thought, she has to have a kid. If you have a child messes up everything. So I gave her a child. And then I was interested also in chaos. And her daughter is total opposite of the mother. She likes to put things where they don't belong. She likes to make noise. She likes to be everywhere at the same time. And she's not quiet. And she doesn't like order. And of course, because it's about this difficult relationship between these two when the daughter grows up. So in the book, she's already an adult, but we also look back at her youth. But of course, I got a lot of questions. Well, how's the relationship with your mother and your daughter? And I always, sometimes I have to disappoint the people that I don't have very terrible stories about that, because for me, it's like I'm both women. I'm the chaotic one and I'm the structural one at the same time, or they one day I'm the other one, and one day I'm the other one.
Yeah. То повечето хора сме май така.
I'd say this goes for most people. Certainly this goes for me.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I'm really chaotic, especially in my thoughts. You used very interesting terminology there, the wet and dry type. And I'd like to also mention that the reason they start living together is that during this chance meeting at the beginning of the novel,
yes.
We realized that the mother has been hiding her cancer diagnosis from her family and tells her daughter, and the daughter decides to move in with her because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting what the surface of the right thing to do, and meanwhile, under the surface, things are very different. Craving is something the characters experience very often, literally, but also metaphorically, I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
They suffer from lack of communication and even lack of normality in their family.
Yes.
Was this something you wanted to depict through these two characters? For me personally, it was very interesting to see how suddenly that all of these absences come through the surface.
Yes, when someone, obviously the mother is dying. Well, it says so in the first page, so we can tell. And it always, a lot of things intensify in a time like that. And what's interesting, because the daughter wants to be a good daughter, so she thinks, I have to take care of my mother, and the mother thinks, I have to be a good mother, so I have to let her. But actually they both don't want to. And the funny thing is that a lot of readers find it very harsh of the mother, that they tend to read over the part that also in the beginning where Coco says that the daughter says that she doesn't have a room at that time. She's a student. So she also thinks, well, that's an easy way to get a house. But people tend to look over that because it doesn't suit the picture of the good daughter who tries to help her mother. But you know, dramatically, it's always it's terrible to say, but if you have a main character that is dying, you have a really good deadline in the story. You have the tension is very clear. Everything has to happen before someone dies, so it intensifies everything.
Да, аз мисля, че понеже този момент с това, че Коко няма къде да живее, е много...
About this aspect, Coco not having where to live, it's very delicately implied, and maybe the reader, amidst all the complexity, tends to forget about it.
Yes.
This is part of the character of Coco. She isn't motivated by one single thing. She's motivated by many things. And the moment I'd like to ask you about is about the locking up.
Yes.
I don't want to give too much away, but Elizabeth locks up the 2-year-old Coco in her room.
Yes.
And before her death, she locks up her daughter, who is living with her. Is this what you would like to reveal here? What happens to us when we keep things under lock within us? Feelings of guilt, inadequacy. Would you say this is something you put within these bookends of the locking up?
Well, actually, the mother is fine with herself, but she's just not fine with other people. So she locks up her child when she's very young, but she takes really good care of this child. So she puts pillows and cookies and water in the room, and she stops locking her child up when she's old enough to remember, because she says, I cannot really take care of my child. I'm not a good person for her. So she might as well be alone in a room. The only problem is that it's not good for a child to remember that your mother locked you up. You have to remember that your mother wanted you around. Of course, it's something else if you lock up your own feelings or your own memories. But I'm not sure if we are always aware of that. Especially if I speak for myself, like for instance, only this afternoon at 4 o'clock, I started to have stomach aches and getting anxiety attacks. And I did not know why. I have no idea. Maybe it's because I have to talk with you, or maybe it's nothing. I think we don't know so much about ourselves. And we probably lock a lot of things up so quickly that we don't even know it.
I agree with you completely, and I understand very well your answer to this question, because it very often happens to me that I experience this feeling of anxiety without any specific reason. And as you said, there's a lot we don't know about ourselves. But in books, always, and this is why I asked this question, we always seem to look for something in books that will make things clearer, that'll give us answers. And these are very this is a very complicated relationship you describe in your book. But on the whole, reading the novel, there's a kind of very serious tragedy in it. Of course, death seems to be a tragedy, but Elizabeth doesn't seem to perceive it as such. She takes it very calmly, especially since everything is in order around her. So there doesn't seem to be a very serious dramatic conflict. The novel doesn't sound desperate. It doesn't sound hopeless. The protagonists are so entangled, so wound up in this complexity of their relationship. It doesn't seem there's a solution for them. So is perhaps Elizabeth's cancer is perhaps the solution for her, but what is the solution for Coco?
Well, there is no solution for the two of them together. The problem is, or it shouldn't be a problem, that they can live without each other very well. What the hardest thing for Coco is to accept that her mother does not need her. She has a father, there are other people, there is a stepmother, but she has to accept that her mother doesn't need her. So her mother cannot help her with that, obviously. And so her peace of mind, she will have to find on her own. And it's probably better without her mother around.
Има някакво задаване за това, защото тя някак си...
You seem to hint at that, because after her mother's death, she seems to feel liberated. Would it be right to say she feels liberated after her mother's death?
Well, yes, liberated and defeated also, because she thought this is the final moment that I'm gonna bond with my mother, because I'm gonna be there when she dies and I will help her and will be emotional and she will hug me and then we'll be the ideal mother and daughter. Of course, this all doesn't happen. So her greatest fears, they become true. Her greatest longings aren't fulfilled. So that's a big disappointment, but it's also a liberation. It can be, it will be, but that's like a few pages after the end of the book. She has to start all over again, but now she can start her life.
Това така някакси искат да чуя.
Yeah, I think that's what I wanted to hear, that a few pages after the end of the book, she will feel liberated.
She will.
Понеже искам за хумора да ви попитам.
I wanted to ask you about humor. Herman Koch, in a review about Craving, calls it a little treasure in Dutch literature, and calls the humor in your novel refined. I think it's a specific kind of black humor that works very well. But anyway, to what extent is humor important to you in this novel? And do you often use humor in your other novels, which unfortunately we're not able to read because they're not translated?
I think it's almost always a big part of my work, and it's not intentionally, but it's the way I look at the world, and I find the world very tragic and funny at the same time. I have to laugh about terrible things, and well, it's especially, you know, when dramatic things happen, you know, people always have to laugh after a funeral or just the few hours after someone passes away, because then, well, it's such an absurd situation. And I don't know, I always have to laugh at terrible things, but it's not always a good thing. Sometimes I get in fights over it because then I have to laugh really hard, and then people think I find something amusing and I just find the dramatic thing funny, or maybe it's just feeling awkward. I do laugh too much. I shouldn't.
Life is full of absurdities, so I think what you're saying is totally understandable. I don't want to annoy our viewers, but so I'll just say I do have an idea of what a funeral is and what it means to laugh at a funeral. And at my mother's funeral, which was very long time ago, there was such an absurd moment that it made me laugh, but that's what life is like.
Yeah.
What would you tell a reader who is about, our viewers, for example, who are about to read your book? Why should they read it?
It's really fun to identify with people who you normally would find appalling. So the mother she's in a lot of aspects would call her a terrible mother, but the funny thing is that a lot of readers loved her, even more than the daughter. So if you want to identify with terrible mothers, this is your chance.
Okay, great, thanks. Still, let me say a few words about the translator. They're a very important figure, a mediator between the author and the readers. They're a co-author. Let's ask Nevena to tell us a bit more about the translator, Maria Encheva, and what it was like working with her. And that'll also give me a break. Maria is a wonderful translator, and it's very easy working with her because not only does she have a very fine sense of language, which is visible in this translation. This is, I think, the second book she's translated for our publishing house, and she's working on a book by Maria Reinfeldt. She has a very precise language, and in such a short book of only about 200 pages, they really require being very precise. The dialogues are very well calculated. There are very short lines being exchanged between the characters, and there's no way that can work if it's not very well, very precisely translated. Another thing that's very specific to this novel, which I think Maria did very well, is there's this, the author plays on past and present tense, which conveys the dynamics of what's going on right now, in what went on in her thoughts, in her memory, in her childhood. And Maria did this very well, and I think that's part of why the book is so strong in Bulgarian. And I think I hope I will continue to work with her. I think she's an ambassador of Dutch literature and also someone who keeps her knowledge up to date and knows what's going on. So I hope to be able to continue working with her. Thank you. I would also like to congratulate Maria Encheva. Now I wanted to ask Esther, Mrs. Gerritsen, to tell us a bit more about her latest novel, The Return, which was published recently. Again, it's a family story. What's it about? Maybe tell us a bit, give us a little spoiler? Maybe hopefully we'll be able to read it soon.
It's about a young woman who tries to find out the real story about the death of her father. Her father died 20 years ago. They assumed it was suicide, and she doesn't believe that. Her mother is having Alzheimer's, so she's forgetting everything, still in the beginning, and she thinks this is not much longer till I can't ask anything anymore. And she was only 5 when her father died, so she has very little recollection. But her brother, who was 10, remembers more, but he does not want to talk about it. Obviously, it's for him a much more complicated to talk about it because it's about his own memories. So it's about dealing with the past, and do you dig it up or do you keep it hidden? And it actually is also kind of, it has a plot, so they're really gonna dig him up, father, literally, to find out what really happened.
Както е тук Невена, може да прочетем завръщане.
Well, we have Nevena here, so hopefully we can read The Return in some time. It will probably be interesting to our viewers. What do you read except for Virginia Woolf?
Well, at this time, I'm reading this book. It's in English, A Lot of People Are Saying, and it's about the new conspiracism, because a lot of people all over the world, and well, we all know the United States, but also in the Netherlands, very much believe in strange conspiracism theory. So people believe that COVID-19 is invented or doesn't really exist. Well, I find it very interesting how so many people now believe so many strange things. So I really wanted to understand that, like collective psychosis.
Това е много интересна тема.
Yes, that's a very interesting topic indeed, especially in this situation of pandemia. Theories are very popular in Bulgaria that Bill Gates wants to implant chips in our heads. It's unique. So I understand your interest in this book. We saw lots of books in your library that have to do with depression, trauma, the death drive. There was Bert Bellion. We saw 2 books by him. Who is he? I was very interested. Could you tell me a couple of...
I'm sorry.
Barbellion.
Oh, Barbellion. Oh my God. That was a long time ago. Yes, it was it's a book about a young man. I think it's more than 100 years old or something, that book about his last years. So I think it's called Diary of a Dying Man. I'm not sure. This is a long time ago. Where did you see my book? All my books. Yes, Diary of a Dying Man.
Nevena has this, publishes the libraries of the authors she translates. So she published a few pictures of your library. There are a few questions from our viewers I'd like to ask you before the end of our conversation. But before that, in the video you recorded, you said that you hope there's more fun in the future. How do you have fun except laughing at funerals? How do you have fun? What's fun to you?
Oh my God. Oh. How do I have fun? I have fun way too little, I think. I always have fun when my daughter sleeps in my bed. She's 11, and then when we have to go to sleep, we always start giggling about strange words, or we try to translate words in English that we cannot translate. Stupid little things. I always have fun with my dog, and I walk with my dog, and she goes to play with other dogs. But I always think we should have more fun, but it's terrible to find a recipe for it. Well, you cannot go to a funeral to have fun, obviously.
Аз да кажа на зрителите.
I wanted to tell our viewers, because you mentioned your dog. She's called Sorry, and she's very cute. I saw her.
Yes, I can call her. I'll pick her. I'll take her. There she is.
Така, нека да ви задам и въпрос.
Right. So we have a question from a viewer, because there's not a lot of time left. You mentioned you don't like reading book reviews. Do you like meeting your readers?
Sometimes. Sometimes it's interesting to hear what a book does with them. That's interesting to hear. It's more difficult when people want to meet you, because sometimes people think they know you because they read your book and they recognize things, and then they think they're the same like you, but you always recognize those things you want to recognize. So that's difficult, but it's always nice to hear how the readers make their own stories and what happens in their minds.
Дописват или написват наново.
They rewrite your book.
Yes.
Какви обсъждания на книги ви допадат?
So what kind of discussions about books do you like? You perhaps already answered this question to an extent. Okay, we'll skip it.
Because my dog is bored. Sorry, come on. Behave.
Това е последният въпрос. Получихте ли обратна връзка?
This is the last question. Did you get any feedback about this novel specifically from readers who found something in the novel that helped them psychologically? And so, do you believe that books can save people? They can help people psychologically?
Oh, yes. Yes, I do. I do. You can, well, because it's fiction, you can write everything. So you can write about feelings that people are afraid to feel. So I do think that literature can help you to understand that every emotion, every thought is permitted. Not everything you do with them is permitted, but it's good to read. Yes, I do believe that literature can bring you something that nothing else can.
Това е, както се казва,
as they say to me, and I hope to our viewers, that's a great ending to our conversation. Thank you for this conversation, and thank you for being part of the Literature Festival. I wish you more books, stay healthy, and more fun. Have more fun.
Thank you. Thank you. You are all very, very nice. I love to come back one time in person.
Да, и ние много ще се радваме.
Yes, and we would be very happy if you came.
Много благодаря и аз и на Естер, и на
I would
Невена.
also like to thank Esther, Nevena, and Katya. I think it was a wonderful conversation and a great ending. I agree with Katya on every emotion being permitted, although not everything that emotions make us do is allowed. Stay with us. In half an hour, we'll be back online for a conversation with none other than Salman Rushdie. He's an author who's difficult and rare to interview, and he will be interviewed by Dmitry Kinarov. Be with us at 8.
Thank you.